Welcome to Take It from the Iron Woman. My name is Susanne Müller, your host and the Iron Woman. This podcast is about empowering yourself and others to make real changes in the world. You will hear from everyday, smart, sophisticated, hip people like you and me. Not everybody has to be an Iron Woman to impress the world. Together, we will learn from the sports and business leaders how you can become a more successful person as an entrepreneur or a leader. It's one step at a time, one day at a time. Take your steps now. Take your big steps now. Join me on this journey to success. Take it from the Iron Woman. We have Jan Somers with us. He's from Belgium and we met in 2009. Welcome, Jan. Give us a little update on who you are and how we met.
Yeah, that was 2009 when we met at the World Appreciative Inquiry Conference. And afterwards we met in India, we met at the Global Learning Festival. And obviously we met in New York when I was one of your guest lecturers on one of your classes. I have started my career working for the British Army, actually. As a Belgian civilian, I worked for the British Army for about 10 years. After going to school, I went to work for the British Army more or less in the logistics systems. Eventually, I was trained in UK to become a work-study practitioner in management services. One of the memorable moments was Professor Cass, who was the rector of the university in UK, who gave us his opening speech or welcome speech. And he said, when you are going to work in organizations and try to improve and work with people in organizations to reach whatever goal, make sure that you're going to experience that you need 15% of your time you will be spending using your knowledge and your theories. 15% of your time you will be using your common sense, but 70% of your time you will be dealing with people. Get yourself interested in the psychology part of people because you will definitely need it. And if I look back last century, in retrospect, it was that spot on. It's about people. You can have a great concept, great theory, a great model or whatever. If you cannot get it across to people or get them excited for it, then that's it. Back in 1991, I decided to quit the safe environment of this British Army thing, and I decided to start working on my own as an independent consultant, trainer, coach, together with my passions of photography and poetry. So I mainly work for large corporations, international corporations like Mazda, Honda, DHL, that kind of organizations, and I help people who are working in like key positions like managers, directors, supervisors, coaching them on their leadership, on their organizational challenges. One of the venues that I've been working on for a couple of years now already is we have this trend, and it's not just in Belgium, but we have this trend also in Belgium about the burnouts, people getting burned out. I also give workshops for people to how do you keep working with passion, with gusto. I refuse to use the word burnout as a title of my workshop because I want to shed the light on what we want to achieve, not on what we want to avoid.
Exactly.
So that's why my sessions call Working with Gusto, Work with Passion.
That sounds cool. And gusto sounds something like having a nice coffee or eating. So it's more the Italian style and probably the enjoyment. And we know like our Wednesday podcast is, I want to invite people who can give tips, who have like you passions that maybe we have them, but we are not realizing that we have the creativity in us. Before we started recording, you said something about poetry. So tell us about your project. And then we should not forget your other project, the Nose to Nose. So two things we want to hear from you.
Yes. I'm a poem writer, and I'm also nominated as the village poet here in our little village. When we celebrated the so many years existence of our village, 750 years existence, and they looked for a village poet. I love to write poetry. But I'm a people person. I'm somebody working with teams, with groups. So I started a co-creativity project, which is nowadays I put a picture on my Facebook. I'm a photographer as well, so I put pictures that I take. I put them on the Facebook page. What comes alive when you look at this picture? What does it in your mind, in your body, in your system? Just share it with me. And those inputs, then I try to compose that into a poem. And then I give it back to the community that have participated. And so they see the poem that has come alive based on their inputs. And that's nice. I mean, I get this project like the last one I did early this week. I get about 30 people who gave inputs.
It's like a word collage that people are helping you. So it's a co-creation of the poem.
Yeah, yes.
It's very cool.
Yes. It's co-creative. And you could see that I've been doing this before this Corona thing happening. But you could see that now more people are interested in that.
Sure.
So it means they are looking for, how can I do something that makes sense, something that gives me this feeling of I am participating in something and I am doing something worthwhile, be it creating art, be it creating some care for some people or whatever. I definitely take away from the positive psychology, which was the appreciative inquiry methodology or philosophy, and the positive psychology are quite moments that have triggered me to look for the venue of how can we co-create, how can we work on the successes and the strengths, rather than looking at, I am not a poem writer, I am not a photographer, I am not a painter, I am not a this, I am not a that. Well, you might be surprised that if you give like oxygen to your strengths and to your deep passions, you might find some very, very inspiring, nice things can happen to you.
Some hidden gems. I like that oxygen, right? So tell us a little bit about the Nose to Nose project. And I'm proud to say that I'm part of this, right? I have a picture there too, yeah.
Now, this goes back to 2012 when we met at a global learning festival of the Constellation, which is an organization working in about 60 countries, helping organizations, communities, and people to work on their own strengths and to work towards their dream. During one of the breaks during the 5-day conference, there was 2 people sitting to each other, talking to each other. There was somebody from Kenya and somebody from Germany. So they said, "Oh, Jan, can you take a picture from us?" So I looked at those 2 beautiful people. One was a brown colored skin, and one was actually a quite white colored skin. And the contrast was so beautiful. And so I said, well, wisdom is something which resides in the connection between people. So how can we symbolize this? It's not between the ears. Wisdom is something which is between the noses. So I asked those 2 ladies, can you put your noses together and I'll take a picture? And they were absolutely, they were thrilled. They immediately started shouting out to other people, saying like, oh, look at this, Jan has taken a picture of us. And within minutes, I had a couple of people saying, oh, we want this as well. So I decided this is going to be an international project called United Noses for Wisdom and Peace. And I call for people around the world who are participating on the Facebook group, United Noses for Wisdom and Peace. Well, not in the quarantine Corona period now, but you have to take your distance, because that's my dream, to have more than 100,000 people around the world, symbolizing the fact that wisdom is something that is co-created and not something which resides in just one head.
That's really beautiful. I think we have a lot of tips, right? So the poetry, the photography. So what I like when you said at the beginning, it's about people. We can have a lot of knowledge and concept and methodologies, but if you don't understand the people, then where do we go? Maybe one final thought before we end this talk.
If I limit myself to just one, I would like to quote Professor Seligman from the positive psychology, when he inspired me by saying there is something like post-traumatic stress, like people going to war zones. You discover that people returning, that they have, or people that have some severe incident, they experience severe stress and they could have post-traumatic stress. But he also discovered that a lot of people going into very severe stress situations also develop personal post-traumatic growth rather than post-traumatic stress. My wife is one great example of that. When she was faced with cancer and rheumatoid arthritis and other things, she immediately said, I am going to step forward. I am not going to sit down in the corner of the victims. I am going to live a life. For me, she is a living example of post-traumatic growth. This is a very stressful period. This is a very stressful time for people around the world who are faced with this corona thing. So what I would like to advise is to look at things like positive psychology, like how can I help positively grow based on this stressful period. I've been looking into quite deeply in what we call the vagus nerve, one of the cranial nerves in our system. Like in stressy situations, we get this flight or fight or paralyze reaction. And that is one part of our vagal system. The other system that comes alive when you are feeling safe is something that you could maintain. That's something you could trigger in a positive way so that you are taking yourself out of this depressed state or fight status. Or Professor Porges, who is the polyvagal theory discovering man. And you have Stanley Rosenberg from Denmark, who has written the very interesting book called The Healing Powers of the Vagus Nerve. There are some basic exercises. They work. They keep you in a very good mood.
Oh, that's what we need. Thank you so much. And we will make sure to have the information in the show note. Thank you so much, Jan. It is always a pleasure to talk to you.
And I wish you all the success and all good health.
Thank you. Same to you. How interesting was that to listen to Jan from Belgium. He's a poet, he's a photographer and a coach and facilitator. Certainly he has many great insights for all of us. Next week we will hear from Charbel from Mexico City, a translator and interpreter. He has been working from home for many years. All people have great stories. Chime in every Wednesday.